So thanks everyone. Good morning, afternoon or evening to you all, depending on where you are in the world. Thanks for joining this, our 7th World Tote Association webinar. This one is entitled Single and Multi-Leg Bets, Friend or Foe. In case we haven't met either in person or on one of the thousands of Zoom calls over the last 2 years, I'm John Natman, Chief Commercial Officer at the UK Tote, and I'll be hosting today's call. In this session, we're going to be looking at how pool operators can compete in a fixed odds single market, as well as what can be done to maximise the attraction of pool multi-leg bets. This webinar is being recorded and the link will be sent to members and be available to download. If you do have any questions during the webinar, please put them in the chat and I'll collate them and we'll have a Q&A at the end of the 3 presentations. So I'm joined on the panel today by 3 excellent speakers. First off, Jamie Hart. He's our Director of Racing and Liquidity here at the UK Tote. Jamie has over 30 years experience in the gambling industry, having worked in both Australia and Europe, spending 10 years of that at William Hill, building their digital business. Jamie's going to focus on the competition with fixed odds in the singles market. Following on from Jamie, Nicholas Johnson. Nicholas first came into contact with the gambling industry as a player, playing professional poker for a few years before discovering horse racing, and after a period as a successful professional punter and graduating from business school, the poacher turned gamekeeper and joined ATG. Since then, Nicholas has had various business development roles and for the last 3 years has been responsible for ATG's horse betting. So Nicholas is going to present on attracting players to multi-leg bets. And then wrapping us up on the presentation front, Simon Fraser. Simon is the Senior Vice President of International at the First Group. First Group includes world-leading racetracks, Gulfstream Park in Florida and Santa Anita in California. And Simon has had a long career distributing thoroughbred racing to international jurisdictions. So I'm sure we'll have come into contact with many of you and is going to run us through the outlook for the rapidly evolving US market. As I mentioned, we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So please put any questions into the chat. And I will hand over to Jamie Hart on our first topic.
Okay, I'll just try and share my screen. Is that filling the screen now? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so just to give a bit of background, so I'll be looking at kind of the singles market, particularly in a very competitive market. So with the UK, to give some background, there's 6.9 billion total gross gambling yield in the last full year of official figures. Now, if you see there on the left, still most of that, even online betting, most of that's taken up with gaming in terms of yield. That's not turnover, it is yield. So the turnover is even bigger in favor of gaming. Football is the biggest sport to bet on, which you would expect, but horses is still bigger than all of the rest of the sports put together in the UK. So it's still a significant opportunity, and it's still the key kind of betting sport that people tend to get introduced to in the past. Now it comes that they tend to get into football first. But if you look across, fixed odds betting on horses is by far the lion's share of the market. The betting exchanges dominated by Betfair in this country, and the Tote is just a smaller part of that. So just to give you an idea of just how competitive it is here, we have a Tote monopoly, but we certainly don't have a horse racing monopoly in that sense. Now, when the Tote was created, there is a very different environment. The fixed odds competition has really grown through online, the spread of online, but that has led to a lot of pricing competition. The bookmaker groups nowadays, all of the big ones offer £1 million maximum payouts on horse racing, 2 million on football. So the days when the Tote jackpot was first started, bookmakers would have, some of them had a 999 to 1 maximum payout or a £20,000, £10,000 maximum payout. And so the Tote offered the biggest payouts in the market. Now it takes us a while to get to £1 million payout in some of our rollover markets, so that we aren't just gifted these kind of big payouts as a differentiator anymore, given that I can use a free format bet to build up to £1 million on horse racing. There are lots of flexibility now around people's bets, so you can pick your own multiples. You can cash out there are lots of, you know exactly how much you're going to bet you're going to win from your selections in a horse racing bet with the fixed odds boys. Demographics are changing. The increasing number of first-time racecourse attendees are now having started coming to the racecourse already having had a betting app on their mobile phone, so they're not looking for people to introduce them to betting via the Tote, because they're coming there already familiar with their Sky Bet app or their William Hill app. And historically, Tote players are aging, while the younger audience insists purely on their mobile phone, but they expect plenty more service, flexibility, value, and entertainment from that experience. They don't like talking to people so much. So going up to a kiosk to have a bet where you're not completely confident in yourself. People don't like feeling stupid. They don't like asking questions, and so they prefer to self-service via their phone. So we're not getting people introduced in that sense now. So if you look at the backdrop of value, particularly around win betting and singles betting in the UK market, and this is the one where everybody compares, because that's where it's most clear in the win market, because that's where you go to in this country. Places like Odds Checker, there'd be Easy Odds, those kind of price comparison sites. It's the win bet that's front and center. Now, in order of the value on offer, exchanges historically the best. So Betfair SP will be around 101%, and the SP over here, the starting price is the result that gets reported in all the newspapers and the media. The starting price historically was the price of the best available price on the race course. It's now the best available price from all the major bookmakers, the online bookmakers, and so it's actually got a bit more competitive. But I'll refer to the SP if I'm referring to the SP, and that is the starting price that's returned in the UK, the official winning price of the horse when it wins a race. And in this country, the official winning price is a fixed odds price rather than a Tote dividend. Now, the exchanges, they bet to roughly 100%. You then pay your commission on top of that. You can either pay a 2% commission all the way up to an 8% commission. You choose how much you pay. You might think, well, why don't I pay? Why doesn't everybody choose 2%? But you can choose to have lots of promotions and stuff and get the 8% cash back, things like that. But then if you win too much from Betfair, then if you're a consistent winner, they can charge you anything from between 20% and 60% of your profit for consistent winners. With a bookmaker, the SP average over round is 118% in this country, but that is the final SP. It's roughly about 1.5% a runner. That gives a theoretical margin of 15%. But in the UK, all bookmakers bet with best odds guaranteed. So if you take a price with a bookmaker, and say you take 6-1 and the SP is 8-1, you will get paid at 8-1. If you take 6-1 and the SP is 4-1, you remain with your 6-1. So you're locking in a worst position possible when you're taking a 6-1. And then you'll have other bookmakers like Bet365 that on top of the best odds guaranteed will also say that they'll match the best price of every horse in the race of every runner after a certain time. So after 10 o'clock on a Saturday, Bet365 will match the best price in the market for all of them. So and then you're down to about 4% total book from that kind of situation. Meanwhile, the Tote hadn't moved. We'd actually the takeout rate had grown over the last 20 years up to 19.25 standard takeout rate, which created an average over around 125%. So while everywhere else was getting much more competitive, we were getting less competitive. So another reason why the Tote had stopped being a major part of the market. So how do we make the Tote win competitive? Well, with those, as I've explained in the last one, we were completely uncompetitive at 19.25%. It meant that when you're betting on the Tote, 70% of the time, you would get a worse price than the SP, and the SP was absolutely the minimum you'd get from a bookmaker. So the worst price than the SP 70% of the time. To put that into perspective, if you were at a 7-race meeting, it would be 4,500 to 1 that you would not experience an underpay at that meeting. The average punter in the UK has 16 bets a week. If you had 16 bets on the Tote, if you were not to get a disappointing dividend out of those 16 bets, it's 200 million to 1. So you're as likely to win the Euro Millions. So everybody betting with the Tote was almost guaranteed a poor experience versus their colleagues that were betting via fixed odds. And so we had to do something about that. So that's where we introduced an SP guarantee, where we guarantee, just like the bookmakers now, if you bet on the Tote, you will never get less than SP. So we immediately cut out that disappointing feeling that people were getting when they were feeling underpaid by the Tote. And it's the win market where they're comparing. We also added in Tote Plus for the people that are coming direct to the Tote, so that to reward people for coming to the Tote directly, because mostly we take our bets through partners, and obviously we are paying the majority of the commission to the partners that own the customer. So instead, when the customers come direct to us, we add on that 10% to the dividend. We don't pay it in a rebate because we find that people don't share. A rebate isn't socially shareable on a Monday, whereas if you're getting 10% better price than your friends, that is socially shareable. People will talk about that. And so that's brought us down to beating SP 56% of the time. Well, the average beat is by 90p, so almost a point on average. We beat the SP. And that works out about 8% better than SP over time. So the average SP, 118%, as I said, ours is down to 109%. That's with SP guarantee and with the Tote Plus in action. So immediately we've become something worth having. More often than not, you get better than the SP, and now you never get worse. And just to look at that across the other market, the other bets, when we looked across Tote Plus on Exacta and Trifecta, we also give 10% bigger dividend on Exacta and Trifecta. But actually, we were already very competitive on those, and that's not where people are comparing. So we didn't have to do any kind of guarantee against those, but we're still in there with 78%. We beat the Exacta by an average £17.45, 23% better on the Exacta than the bookmakers forecast, because the bookmakers have their own forecast. The bookmakers also have their own TriCast, same bet as the Trifecta, but it's the first three in order, but we beat that by almost 50% regularly. But because people were only comparing the win market, that was kind of going unnoticed. So the Tote was branded poor value, and people were leaving in their droves and going to the fixed odds bookmakers, despite the fact that we had very competitive offers elsewhere. Just to give an example of where you can highlight that, we now show the win dividend book percentage in the top right hand corner of all of our books, so you can see just how competitive it is. And when you have these kind of small fields, if people aren't backing the favorite, it means you can get a completely unmatchable kind of value in these markets, where no bookmaker can offer a market less than 100%. Certainly Betfair can't exist at less than 100%, but we will get value points where we bet to what we call overbroke, but you're even betting to less than 100% in some of these. And these are the kind of things that get shared. And you certainly never see, we highlight the value of the Tote here rather than the poor value that we had in the past, because people can ignore the £9 versus 8 to 1, 434 versus 100 to 30, 450 versus 7 to 2. They're all matching, but then the one that really stands out is the 253 against an odds-on chance. And that's where we've found a complete transformation in the way people bet with the Tote, because they know that they're not going to get less. They're only going to get more if they do get something different from SP. Now, to give you an example of, we've been getting that out to the market for the last couple of years online, but we got the early adopters, but we were struggling to get beyond the early adopters. To give an impression of the difference it made to our win business online, we grew our win business by 2,000% online when we introduced SP guarantee. But on race courses, it didn't follow suit. So we would be shouting through all of our marketing angles and marketing channels about this kind of SP guarantee. But whenever anybody turned up to physically interact with the Tote branding at a race course, it was completely different. So they were getting £8, $8, 7 to 1 on the online experience, but when they turned up at the race course, they were still getting £6.70 on a 7 to 1 chance. And we weren't getting that cut through, because people it felt like it was a gimmick that they couldn't get hold of. It wasn't really true. And so since the start of November, with the majority of UK race courses we've now been offering SP guarantee on the race course. And then if you, and pushing best of both, this is the best, you know, Tote versus SP, get the best of both. Your new Tote guarantee is all this kind of push on course. And to give, most race courses we have taken it, we've got a control course that has regular racing. And the control course is growth. And this is since 2019. So we've taken the years, you know, the pre-COVID, so outside COVID impact. The control course, their win turnover is down 15%, their place turnover is down 32%, their other turnover is down 9%, and in total they're down 18%. That's turnover, or spend per head. The on-course spend per head of the race courses where we've put SP guarantee in, and of course we've only put it in on the win market. The win versus a 15% decline has gone up 31.5% across those courses spend per head. The place as a halo effect has come up 10.2% because of your each way betting. We haven't done anything to the place market, that still runs at the full margin. And then with the other, which is kind of unaffected by any of the SP guarantee, you can see that that is reflective of the other at the control course. It's like down 8.5. So we haven't had as much of a halo effect as we did in early tests, but it's quite interesting there that the markets or the pools that we have done nothing with are showing a similar trend as the control track. And yet, you know, overall we're up 19.1%. Now, long term, with the control track showing those kind of trends and the competitiveness of mobile betting and off-course betting, that, you know, I think it comes out that we've got to do something to arrest that kind of change to get the habits of people coming back to the windows, and we're seeing that difference. I think that's a very strong kind of indication of where we'd be if we hadn't done anything on course. Of course, then it also helps our off-course message. Now, the other piece that we've got is certainty. So with the bookmakers, the fixed price is guaranteed. People say, I like betting with the bookmaker because I know what I'm going to get. Exchanges, their price is fixed, but you don't get, if you take 6-1 and the market goes out to 8-1, you are stuck with 6-1. The Tote, historically, no certainty of pricing because you don't know what you're going to get. No ability to hedge with confidence either with or against the Tote, which is a problem. So that if I've taken 6-1, I can't hedge into the Tote because I don't know what I'm going to get. And again, we suffer here with slow data refresh cycles due to these the ITSP collations, and which means that for in running betting, which has significant turnover in the UK, people can't bet on the Tote, find out what their price is, and then hedge that in running in the race itself, because it takes us too long at the moment to give a definitive price that the people are on, so they can't rely on it and they can't bet against it, which again hits our turnover for the singles market. Because of that lack of certainty, there's no point us even pretending that we're relevant until the last 10 minutes, really, of the game. We can't talk to people saying you should be betting on the Tote at 10:30 in the morning for a 4 o'clock race, because people won't take us seriously. So it's really about owning that 10 minutes before the off, because the 10 minutes before the off, the market has consolidated. The fixed odds market, they're all offering the same prices because everyone takes the show price from the race course pretty much, or the industry show price as it is now. So the only place you'll get a different price, or the only place you're likely to get 250, that odds-on chance, is the Tote. It's the only, you won't get it at Betfair either. So we've got to own this period, this kind of 10 minutes before the race, as the time that, if you haven't had a bet yet, this is where you should be betting on the Tote. And that's what we're trying to do, just to highlight the upside of betting on the Tote if you haven't bet already. And given that 85% of the turnover takes place in the 10 minutes before the race, it's not a bad place to own. Looking again then just on flexibility, this is an issue for us. Bookmaker, flexible free format multiples, flexible markets, flexible offers, you know, money back coming second, you can pick your own number of places, cash out, anti-post. 30% of racing bets are free format multiples. Exchanges, you can trade in and out of positions. In running trading, they don't have free format multiples. They stopped doing them in 2019. Also, certainly Betfair did. But we don't offer that. That's certainly something that people are used to in this country, being able to choose your 3 races from race courses and have a treble across them. So it's something we'll be looking to introduce for pools betting, but at the moment we don't have it. So bets restricted to pools on offer, no bets after pool closure, lack of leg-to-leg visibility caused by ITSP, no cash out, no anti-post. And the ultimate example of the lack of flexibility of pool betting was the Modern Games debacle at the Breeders' Cup, where in this country, and certainly in other countries, it obviously wasn't the greatest marketing stunt for the tote and totes around the world. So how does a tote remain relevant in the face of fixed odds competition? The main piece for us is be competitive in the win market, because that's the only place that people are comparing, and then differentiate in exotics and multi-legs. So it's fixing the value issues and doubling down on the unique tote experience. So these are the three main points that we've come to about what is the unique tote experience where we have a benefit over the fixed odds guys. So winners welcome, because the pool is agnostic. Fixed odds environment, the restriction of winners is massive over here. People complaining about it is a big key talking point. We do not have minimum stakes that a bookmaker has to take in the UK. And again, education and data for players and assisting people to win is something the bookmakers cannot do. We're delivering form with its basic modeling tools, automated betting for systems. They can't do. Tote betting, player v crowd, instead of the player versus bookmaker. So it's a very different experience. So we need to focus uniquely on that pool data. So what percentage of the bets taken are on this selection? What percent of turnovers on this selection? It's something that the bookmakers don't, it's a different angle of the way of looking at the way people bet. Of course, then you've got much more flexibility into the social interaction, gamification, league tables, joint tickets, syndicates. And I know that Nicholas will talk about what ATG have done in this kind of areas that's leading the tote world on that. And then, of course, rollovers and diverse opinions create genuine value. This is particularly clear in the global pools when we have the world pools. And you can get where you've got very different pricing generated from the domestic market because of that international diversity of opinion. And the rollovers, where there is genuine value within the market, which no fixed odds bookmaker or betting exchange can offer the value that comes with a rollover. So just to finish off is, okay, so with singles, can we do anything with singles apart from just match the competitiveness of bookmakers? Well, if we're a tote, I think sometimes we've got to look at it from a different way. We don't have to just match the same kind of bets that bookmakers have. And the best, if you look across football and other sports, the best fixed odds bet that's been introduced in the last 20 years that became popular was both teams to score in football. Now, the main reason is not because anyone is particularly interested in both teams scoring. It's much more to do with the psychology of the bet itself. So the both teams to score bet in football was the only bet you couldn't lose until the final whistle went. So it gave you, if you wanted just a bet to cheer, you either won and got paid before the end of the football match, or you were still cheering until the end. You weren't dead until the final whistle went. And we thought, well, we've got to do something like that for horse racing, because at the moment, when we talk to people that went horse racing, for the first, second time, or even just people that went regularly, what's the worst thing about horse racing and going to the races is when you don't even get a cheer. I wasn't involved in any of the finishes. My horse fell at the first. Every time I look at the telly, it's disappearing out the left-hand side of the television. So I haven't had any kind of enjoyment in the bet. So what we wanted to do is bring out a bet like both teams to score that guaranteed people a cheer in a race, but was at a level that people could interact with without significant knowledge of horse racing. So we thought, and that bookmakers couldn't undercut or really would find very hard to price. So something we want to develop and in the singles market and to generate more churn. And when you think back to my initial slide where we talk about gaming being, the lion's share of all betting yield in this country. So all of that is priced at less than 4%. We wanted to do a nice head-to-head bet, and we wanted to bring that to guarantee you an interest in the finish, to make it around the winning distance in a race. So it was a very simple concept of clear versus close. So all you're betting is how far the winner wins by. It doesn't matter who wins. You're just betting on the distance of the winning but it's always one length. So close is up to and including one length. Clear is over one length, and it's very easy to spot because if there's a gap between the nose of the horse and the rump of the horse in front, then it's clear. If they're overlapping, it's close, and then pricing it at casino levels of head-to-head pricing, so baccarat levels of pricing, 2.5%, 3%, but just to introduce a bet that then nobody can price, but the market can price, guarantees you a cheer at the end. Whatever happens in a race, you're either if you're on close, you're cheering the second to get closer. If you're on clear, you're cheering the one in the lead to get further ahead. It's just a new concept, but it means that from a singles point of view, you've got a bet that is purely tote. We want to introduce it in race courses first, but gets you interacting with the tote on something very simple, and then gets you used to using the tote. You can play it on all racing, including greyhounds. But again, repeat business after pickups on the course, highly engaging, accessible, instant involvement for no need for form studies. So really, it's just to bring around to us that while in the win market, the pool needs to be competitive enough, you've got to make that as competitive as you can, because otherwise people will discount the tote as an option for all of your betting. Whenever you're introducing something new, make it something that the tote could do better than the fixed odds guys. So while the multis are always a strength, it doesn't mean that we can't invent new single bets that can be engaging and get people coming back to the tote and re-engaging with the tote, because they don't have that at the fixed odds boys. And so playing to our strengths in terms of exotics and entertainment. That's it for singles.
Thanks, Jamie. And from strengths of multi-leg entertainment leads us nicely over to Nicholas, who's going to talk to us on the multi-leg portion.
All right, thank you. And thank you, Jamie, for your very interesting presentation. Can you all see my screen? Is it working?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. All right, before I get into my presentation, I would like to start off from another angle. Do you like fishing? I do. I'm not that fond in getting fish, to be honest. A perfect day for me would be a full day out on the sea without getting any fish at all. But that's not why we're looking at this picture right now. Book around 10 years ago called the Blue Ocean Strategy. I was thinking about starting a business on my own, and I wanted to learn what differentiates successful businesses from companies that struggle. And to very briefly summarize the book, it was about how to find your own space in the market that makes competition irrelevant. Seek the blue ocean, in difference to the Red Sea, where the competition is fierce and the blood is tainting the water. And I think this general idea is interesting when looking into our businesses as tote companies as well. We all have our specific markets and product portfolios, but I think many of us have a similarity in different business models than most of our competitors, and also have products that differs, it be multi-leg or other type of exotic bet. Jamie's example with clear versus closed, I guess is another example that fits into this model. If I would show you ATG's portfolio in the light of this picture, the idea, it would look something like this. This is a graph with level of differentiation on the vertical line and level of competition on the horizontal line. And I also think this graph reflects very well how the different products in our portfolio have performed the last couple of years, with increased competition mainly affecting our single race bet types. The exotic the bet types are, the more differentiated they are from our competitors, and they have performed much better. Having products that differs is a good start, but I don't think it's enough. To retain the customer base and also be able to gain new customers, we also have to deliver on other aspects to make us relevant and interesting. So at ATG, a main focus has been to enhance our customer experience and in this way attract a broad customer base. So this gets me into today's subject, how to increase the interest for multi-leg betting. My name is Niklas Jonsson and I work as head of horse betting at ATG, and I'm responsible for our horse betting products. I've decided to divide the presentation into three parts. First though, we will have a look at the Swedish market. Then I will speak about a few examples on how we have been working with enhancing the betting experience at ATG. And then last, a few words about something that we at ATG have a focus on going forward. The Swedish licensed market includes the betting areas horse racing, sports, and casino. 92 operators have a license in Sweden, and about 10 of the biggest sportbooks operators also offer horse racing, mainly with fixed odds. Almost a third of the Swedish betting market comes from horse racing, and in this third of the market, ATG are very dominant in terms of market share. So when we think about how to increase our customer base and the turnover, doing it more in terms of how we can grow the horse racing market rather than how we can take market shares from our competitors. To do so, we are confident that the key is to work with the customer experience. In the Swedish licensed market, we're very in regards to offering any types of bonuses, incentives to our customers, that are other classical sales tactics to attract and retain customers. For instance, it would be hard for us to take up competition regarding price with sports or casino. There are % margin. So it needs to be something else that makes us interesting and attractive. That's the focus on the betting experience. Enhancing the betting experience. This is a subject I could talk about for hours. There's so many perspectives of it and areas. And we do work with it at ATG from every way, I would say, from product development to our sales channels and our communication. However, today, since my time is limited, I will focus on two areas: product positioning and exciting betting experiences. Examples that we've done last years at ATG to improve this. Tote betting are indifferent to fixed odds and sport books, kind of a static way to bet. Jamie talked about it as well. In a fixed odds environment, you can mix and match however you like. And from that perspective, fixed odds could both be single race and or multi-leg betting. And this flexibility also though make it hard to box in or package. And from this perspective, I would say that we have a huge advantage with our more static Tote products when it comes to branding, communicating, and a specific product experience. So last years at ATG, we've been focusing a lot in giving our big multi-leg products their own look and feel. Each product's their own arguments why you as a customer should be interested. This should also reflect the products in every way, like how we market them, content we offer, specific product features. So on this slide, example of three biggest multi-leg products. If we look into V75, offer that product on Saturdays. The biggest USPs for V75 is that it should offer the biggest and highest top wins that you can find in Sweden in regard to tote betting. It should offer the best sports. So the horse racing sport are offering the best races on Saturdays on V75. It needs to be inviting since we are going after a very big customer base for this product. Experience to be social. Also broadcast V75 live on broad TV to enhance and attract a big customer base. And when it comes to V75, our biggest competitors are not other horse operators or fixed odds. I'd say our two main are Stryktipset. It's Tote product focusing on football, and also can attract a broad customer base talking about big wins. When it comes to V86, we offer that on Wednesdays. It should be hard but rewarding. Our product has the highest median, the highest median when it comes to winnings, even though it doesn't have the same top wins as V75. We use the express concept, meaning that we 86 is offered on 2 tracks, which makes the product way much faster, since we can have one leg at a time from each track. The product is offered late at night on Wednesdays. And our third big product, Grand Slam 75, is offered on Sundays. It's mainly for the skilled players. We offer a €1 million guarantee if you are the only one having 7 correct ones. We also have a specific feature called GS7 alternative, meaning that you can only if you want to bet to have 7 correct ones, and then you get the amount of what you would have won if you didn't use it, but you won't get anything if you have 6 or 5 correct ones. Also have a special jackpot distribution for this product. And when it comes to excitement, what drives excitement? We talk about the betting experience that we deliver to our customers. We often divide it into 3 parts: before, during, after. Major aspect for all these parts last year has been the increased digitalization that comes with new customer behaviors and needs. So let me give examples what we've been working on launched lately. If we start with before, meaning the things we offer the customer up to that they place their bet. We do have a broad perspective when it comes to content, and we've worked a lot with developing what we're offering our customers, both to satisfy the skilled customers and the beginners. We offer podcasts, tips, news, interviews, etc. When it comes to new things added, information regarding what type of wagon the driver will use. Included warm-up videos in our race cards to get a similar experience as being on the track. And we have comments for every horse last 5 races, so you fast and easy can get an idea about the historical performance. When it comes to betting methods, they are key enablers to reach a broad customer base. Focus here has been to make these as smooth and easy as possible so anyone can participate in our multi-leg betting products, no matter the level of knowledge. We recruit most of our new customers through V75, and to be honest, it's kind of a complex product for beginners. Using Harry Boy, our big brand, using private shares, the possibility to play together with your friends, shop shares that we now also are selling available digitally in our own section, ways for us to recruit and retain new beginners to the sport. For our advanced players, we last year launched our reduced betting tool, which is integrated in our homepage, where they can use different functions to make smarter bets. All right, during the experience when consuming the races, a key unique selling point for us compared to most other sports is that we broadcast every race that we take bets on. One exciting thing that we've been working on is to combine the racing experience with your own bet. It's the MVP for mobile phones last year, and now very soon we will release a new version also working in a desktop, integrating your own picks into the positioning system, showing in your live feed. Yeah, an example on the screen here is from version. And this gives you your own personal live experience. Another important aspect is the races itself. Here we're working closely together with the sports to ensure that the races are exciting to watch. Getting better and better with information available today. And if the races are not tight and unpredictable, we will have a hard time offering an interesting show, and in the end, a hard time giving out big winnings on our products. When it comes to after, since the behavior consuming our products are changing, we need to keep up in the services we offer. That's the days when everyone saw the races live at the track, and people are getting used to be able to consume their experiences on demand when it suits them. We have our own demand site called ATG Play, where you can find all our video productions, and we will further develop that in the future. Also just launched a new function for Harry Boy players. When enabled, either you get a mail or a text when the races are finished, and discuss with a link where you can correct your bet at any time directly without needing to log in. Further drive engagement and discussions after the races, we're publishing statistics from our horse tracking system, where you can see how fast the horses opened behind the gate or how fast they finished the race. These have become very popular and are also often referred to in media and tips. So next step for that will be to integrate and present these in our race cards and in our results, to make it even more accessible and easy to find. Before I end this presentation, I would like to share one thing that we will work and focus on going forward. To fully utilize all content, functions, and experience we deliver, the next step will be to personalize what we offer our customers. With a huge customer base with different segments having their own specific needs, this will help us take the next step in building our betting experience. This is an area with many different aspects, and we'll take it step by step. But there are winnings having this both from a communicating aspect and a product perspective, making the site more customizable and personal. With that, I'd like to say thank you.
Thanks very much, Nicholas. Thanks for the presentation. Very interesting. We're going to move on to our final presenter, Simon Fraser, who's going to run us through the outlook for the US markets.
Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is well. I always seem to get the graveyard slot having to follow on from two great presentations. So hopefully I won't put you all to sleep with this one. So thank you very much, Nicholas and Jamie, for those presentations first. So thank you for your time. I just want to kind of give you a quick overview of some of the things that are happening in the US market. It's very complicated with lots going on in different states, so I won't go into too much detail, and obviously happy to answer questions afterwards. But just to kind of have a look at the kind of the single versus multi-legs, how the market's going, what fixed odds could mean if it does roll out across various states and various parts of the US and North America. Just so everybody kind of knows my background, as kind of John mentioned, you know, I've been working in selling racing into international jurisdictions for a long time, both tote and fixed odds. And what I've really seen and kind of learnt with that is how horse racing needs to get sold as a secondary content sometimes when you're not bringing in the premium content and you're competing with either local racing or different time zones within the day. The secondary content and how you get customers interested in secondary content. And when you look at lots of the jurisdictions where horse racing is popular, as Jamie kind of pointed out in the UK, and as is happening in the US, horse racing can be secondary content to sports betting. And we need to kind of look at how that competes, and racing competes with other gambling products, and not just sports betting, but gaming as well. As many people I'm sure been aware, there's fixed odds regulation or legislation is happening in various different states across the US at the moment. It's been pretty bogged down by, you know, state by state legislation and within state legislators. There's not, you know, it's not had universal acceptance yet by racing groups as people wait and see what happens in each state. And potentially there's likely to be a slow rollout and an uptake by tracks and states as they look at what happens in other states and how the legislation has worked, and before they kind of format their own legislation. And one of the kind of the other key bits is there's particularly high tax in certain states on fixed odds sports bets, which is not attractive. So the horse racing currently doesn't attract a lot of tax from a pool betting point of view. So there is a definite wariness around getting too involved with horse racing as a fixed odds sports bet, because it can attract some high tax, 51% in New York, which is pretty prohibitive for making profit. We'll go into a bit in how pool betting can compete with fixed odds in the US in some later slides, and kind of what that could mean to multi-legs as well. But I just wanted to give you a quick view of kind of what the split kind of rough market share is of different bet types, and the kind of the takeout rates of those bet types. And I think this kind of really shows that actually the US market is not a huge multi-leg market. You know, the vast majority of the turnover is on single leg bets. And I think Jamie's stat was that, you know, for fixed odds bets in the UK, 30% of fixed odds bets are multiples, but actually here in the US, only really 16% of turnover comes from those multiples. So there's a big percentage from kind of single leg bets. And one of the big kind of fixed odds terms over here in the US is kind of in-game parlays. And if you kind of equate that to bets like the exactas and trifectas, about 46% of turnover comes from those types of bets, and the rest is from win, play, show. So it's you know, to grow the market and compete, you know, you can spend a lot of time trying to, you know, get someone to place a pick six bet, or get new punters to basically put pick six bets on. But actually the popularity is much more in the single legs. And particularly, you know, if you get a new punter and you get them to put a bet on the pick six, effectively for most of those punters, they're saying goodbye to their money. They're not going to win, they're not going to see the money back, and they're not going to be able to churn this over. So there is there's a very difference in the market that we've seen in the UK and kind of Sweden as well, actually. And, you know, the takeout rate of the win is kind of fairly competitive at 17 and exacta at 21. And actually those types of bets where we can get the punters to win, they can churn the money, seems to me a much more sensible way to push racing and the types of betting. Because actually when you get new customers in, you want them to win. We talked about the kind of the entertainment side of things in previous presentations, and winning is the most, is the best entertainment. So I think those types of this kind of these kind of statistics and kind of view gives an interesting market, and actually where the US should be currently putting its marketing and its promotion is actually not through the multi-legs. It's into those kind of single leg bets where people can win, they can turn over. But that doesn't necessarily work in a fixed odds market, as we've seen. So what does fixed odds potentially mean to the US market? This is this is kind of a bit of a how long is a piece of string question. So I've kind of just brought some points up just to kind of talk about some of the issues. And again, if anyone has any questions, we're more than happy to answer. Now, one big difference.
Just a heads up, Simon. If you're not sharing your screen, then could you? If you're working from the presentation, or something.
Yeah, can you not see the screen?
No, we couldn't at that point, but I think if you give it another try.
Okay. Have you got nothing?
We've got you. Well, I can see a picture of all the people, but no.
Okay, interesting. So have you had no slides so far?
No, I didn't know if it was just a very long intro.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's working. Yeah, got it.
I apologise to everybody.
It was still making sense, though, Sam.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Just picking up where you were.
So there's the graph that I was just talking through, and would have made that part of the conversation slightly easier to follow, I'm sure. And again, this will obviously all be shared afterwards, so everybody can look through this in a bit more detail. But this is the kind of the key bits, the two big bets in the US are the exacta and the win, which both kind of take up 21% of the market. But let me move on. Is that now working okay? So, so what does fixed odds mean for the US market? And one of the big differences between both Sweden and the UK is the horse racing is in the US is not a federal licensed sport or managed sport or betting product. It is very much individual states who regulate and manage the betting on those sports. So there is a piece of federal legislation called the Interstate Horseracing Act, which manages how betting happens across state lines. And horse racing has a unique position in the US that it is the only betting opportunity that is allowed to happen across state lines. And the Interstate Horse Racing Act gives protection to to horse racing because permission has to be given by the horseman groups and the racetracks before anybody outside of their state is allowed to have a bet on it. And they can set the horsemen and the racetracks can really set the terms on what that means, what bet types, who can and who can't bet into the pools currently, and what that could mean for fixed odds as well. So there's a big bit of protection for obviously interstate betting from racetracks. If you're in one state, you can decide what happens in another state with your racing. The majority of kind of US turnover does not currently come from multi-legs, and as we've seen both in the previous presentations, that can potentially cause problems from a competitive nature. That the comparison of that fixed odds win price versus the kind of the tote win price is difficult to compete with in a tote thing. So tote environment. So there's how does that how are we going to manage that? How do we ensure that? And again, the Interstate Horse Racing Act can manage some of that because it can influence on the commercial model that racetracks may engage with fixed odds operators, whether that's share of turnover, bet types, or even potentially saying what margin that bookies have to bet at. And also, they could, the Interstate Horse Racing Act could say that only bets that are not available in the pools can be bet from fixed odds point of view on certain racetracks. So in running, for instance, or prop bets or whatever could be the ones that are that racetracks and various horsemen allow fixed odds bookmakers to take. Now, one of the interesting elements that that we talked about was, actually how with the late price movements from a tote, that can really kind of make punters feel that they're not getting a fair crack of the whip, and they're kind of they bet on something at 5-1, but it goes off at 3s. And I'm sure everybody's seen that Naira have instigated into their win pools that the big computer players and rebaters cannot come into their pools within 3 minutes before the off. And what's that done is really greatly removed the price movements. And there's also some other pools that they've kind of done this with. Now, you could say, does this affect turnover? Well, Naira has been showing record turnover for 2022, some of the highest turnover they've ever had. And for different events and individual days have been beating records. The Saratoga turnover this summer was greatly increased. So it certainly hasn't affected the overall turnover, and the individual punters within those pools have a much better experience. And they are and the punters that bet into Naira pools are campaigning for other racetracks to go the same way. So I think this has been a big success for the average punter to be able to see the solid win price 3 minutes before the off. And as Jamie kind of said, that's the bit that pools need to own. And this is a really good way for them to, for pools across the US to really own that space, to make sure that the price movements aren't massive and the punters have a really solid idea of what price they're going to get. Now, distribution of pool access is an interesting one. Is how do we keep the pools relevant if the market turns to a fixed odds market? Now, this is very much my opinion, is that the more people that have access to the pools and the more fixed odds bookmakers that have pool access on their websites, the more that they will want to push money into those pools and push their customers betting into those pools. And I'm sure, I don't know whether everybody's seen that BetMGM, who are one of the big sports books over here, have launched a racing app. Obviously, FanDuel, who are have always been heavily involved in racing with the Flutter owning TVG, have launched FanDuel Racing, and so those fixed odds bookmakers are already pushing the racing product, and at the moment pool only, which means that their customers are getting used to the pools. And if you look back at the kind of the market split and the types of bets that the sports betting market likes, and New Jersey is heavily reliant on big parlays. So you're already getting the sports bettors who are doing effectively multi-leg bets or in-game parlays like exactas, trifectas. So there's you can, if we distribute the pools to as many people, look at the way the language can match up with some of the sports betting language, there's a potential that you can integrate the pools into a fixed odds book without necessarily having total kind of domination of fixed odds. Now, New Jersey looks like it's going to be the first one, the first state to allow fixed odds betting, and unfortunately, distribution of pool access is a monopoly in New Jersey with New Jersey bets. So that's not something that we're going to be able to see in a New Jersey state, where actually having fixed odds and the bookmakers involved in horse racing can also kind of increase some of the pool access to punters who won't necessarily see the pools and who will bet fixed odds. So if New Jersey does legislate for fixed odds, which it's looking like there could be a launch in March, that is only going to benefit fixed odds in that state and not the pools in any way. And that, so there's an interesting kind of situation, and I think everybody's looking to see how that rolls out across New Jersey. And one of the other things around the kind of that doesn't necessarily mean about fixed odds, but there's currently limited access to the big international pools. It's difficult for a US punter to get into the V75, for instance, to get into, I'm based in the US now. I used to like betting on the play spot. I can't bet on the play spot in the UK. You can't get into the big pools internationally because of the current systems. And actually racing around the world, if it's going to compete with fixed odds, as fixed odds is more legislated, needs to ensure that their systems can offer big pools and big opportunities across the time zones and across the world, so that we can, we're offering a true 24-hour product. And part of that would be looking at the technology to allow access into everybody's big pools, and not necessarily, and this is for the average punter, not necessarily for the big rebaters and so on, to get in there. I wanted to kind of give a couple of lessons that we've kind of seen in from Australia around how the lessons that the North Americans can learn from some of the issues that happened initially in Australia with the kind of the Northern Territories bookmakers effectively taking a free-for-all on racing, and the racing guys and the supporters of racing having to really kind of fight back to get to the strong position that Australian horse racing is in today. The key one was the kind of the legislation, and the legislation around minimum bet limits, which has really kind of meant that effectively the bookmaker's margin is higher because they have to manage those winning customers, and that the tote and the tab price and the fixed odds price are much more similar because of that kind of legislation. It's not necessarily great for the tote because the tote was always able to take the big bets, but it does mean that the pricing and the margin that the bookmakers are offering is a substantial margin. That then means that the kind of the return to racing from those fixed odds bookmakers, with the race fields fees based on turnover and so on, can be managed in a way that is works for racing, that they are seeing a good return from those fixed odds bookmakers that in some other parts of the world they're not. A retail monopoly. So there is a retail monopoly in Australia with a tab, which has helped to protect some of that tote turnover in the for punters who still like to go to the pubs and so on and have a bet. So I'm not sure that would necessarily collate to the US market, but it has shown that there is a protected core of customers who it's difficult to go after, even in the kind of the modern world with everybody having a phone and so on. There's still people who want to bet in cash and bet in a retail situation. One of the other things around kind of the Australian racing, that it is really an integrity first sport. The stewarding is world class, the integrity of the racing is world class. So it does mean that when the bookmakers do take fixed odds bets, the punters know that they are betting on a full, really integrity product. And and I don't mean necessarily around fixing and drug taking, so on. I mean that they know that they're getting the data as fast as possible. And it is the Australian racing organisations have managed to make their product a fixed odds friendly product as well. And if fixed odds rolls out across the US, North American racetracks are going to have to understand that when there are scratches, they need to spread that information out as soon as possible. When the race course moves from turf to dirt, that information needs to get out and distributed as quickly as possible. The stewarding needs to be open and transparent, so that the market and the customers understand what they're getting, and they don't feel like they're getting an experience that is fixed against them. And I don't mean that the race is fixed, but just the kind of the sport is difficult for them to manage. And then the other kind of key, one of the great bits around Australia is there's great media coverage, both on the betting channels with Sky Racing. The races go off on time. Tracks tend to try and work together rather than compete to turnover. They don't run at the same time. And those kind of things don't happen currently in North America. So that's something that needs to be taken advantage of. And there's great media coverage across the country. Sorry, excuse me. And one of the ways that the corporate bookmakers managed to kind of to work their way in and kind of attack the market was the kind of the best tote price. There was different tote prices in different states, and that really helped the corporate bookmakers to buy market share. And again, this is where the racetracks in the US need to use the Interstate Horse Racing Act to ensure that the bookmakers can't just say pay out on tote price if it's better than the SP, that they can control some of that value to protect the tote price as well. And a couple of kind of solutions to fixed odds competition. One for the US market, which is different, I know, from the UK, but that's, I guess, why we're all from different parts of the world, is, you know, concentrate on those win and place pools, the pools that are big at the moment and that people like to use. Look at that, you know, reducing the price movements as well. And I think we've already mentioned that fast data, that kind of being able to deliver really live prices, not 30-second updates, is really crucial. And, you know, potentially looking at what Naira have done and restricting access to those big players. And that really does make the, you know, the product suitable for competition with fixed odds. Distribution and integration, you know, encourage the fixed odds bookmakers in North America and worldwide to integrate into the pool. Try and keep those pools as liquid as possible, so that the punters feel that, you know, again, Interstate Horse Racing Act, no tote, no fixed odds, those types of things that the racetracks can enforce. And then, you know, just one, while we're all here from all over the world, why not have a world super bet? A race, you know, a bet starting with races in Australia, going all the way through to the US West Coast, you know, that is offering massive pools on a weekly or daily basis from commingled across the world. You know, if we're going to put a concentrate on multi-legs, let's look at one that is really looking at value from all of the horse racing punters across the world that could look there. And that is it for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Simon. I can see a question in Q&A, so we'll fire straight into some questions. There's a question for you, Simon. Do you think international racing will be protected by the Interstate Horse Racing Act in relation to fixed odds?
No.
No. That was
no, it's not. Sorry, I could have gone into more detail, but the answer is no, it's not.
And a question for Jamie, just in terms of SP guarantee, the effect on kind of margins from that introduction, because obviously there's some risk involved.
Yeah, so across over the 4 years of running SP guarantee, well, we took 4 years of data. It brings you down from 19.25 to 11.6% takeout. So it's that kind of impact. And then we for online we layered on the Tote Plus as well, which boosts the underlying Tote dividend by 10%, which brings us down to, you know, more closer to 7%, which is a kind of a fair kind of online margin for horse racing. But the standard one goes from 19.25 to 11.6 with the SP guarantee.
Great, thank you. And a question,
John, just quickly, there was a second part to that question, wasn't there, around would the operator have to have approval from the rights holder? Just on that, though it doesn't fall under the Interstate Horse Racing Act, my understanding in New Jersey, for instance, is that any operator that wants to bet on international racing in New Jersey would still need to get permission from the racetracks and the operator. So that's a state legislation in New Jersey, but not covered by the Interstate Horse Racing Act.
Right, thank you. And Nicholas, one for you. The question is, do one size fits all in the betting market? How do ATG communicate differently with the different market segments? I guess referring to when it comes to the multi-legs.
Yeah, first off, I experienced some lagging, so please tell me if you can't hear me well. I think it's okay now.
Yeah.
I'd say no, there's no one size fits all if you're going after different and several segments at the same time. ATG, when it comes to customer base and attention, we need to be very easy in the communication and broad things. And when we have broadcasts in national TV, needs to be in a simple and easy way so everyone can understand and follow. And when it comes to talking with our more skilled players, we will do that in other ways. For example, we send out weekly newsletters focusing on skilled players, and we have our own podcast on ATG called ATG Live, which is more focused on the type of players with more details, talking a lot more about what type of wagons the horses are using and if they're going with or without shoes, etc. So I think it's no one size fits all. And here I think personalization will help us even more to get deeper and further into finding what suits each person in types of communication, etc.
Thanks. And another one for you, Nicholas. In terms of the V75, or I guess multi-leg bets in general, how important is, the question is, how important is value and dividends to takeouts to customers, or actually is it the experience that's most important, given the high proliferation of lucky dips, etc., where it's very common that the player wouldn't even know what the takeout is? Is there a value issue in those multi-leg bets, or is it all about the experience?
The value part is important. I mean, we are selling skilled betting products. It has a skilled perspective in it, and you should be able to, with knowledge and information and putting the hours into it, be able to have a better result than people not doing it when you bet against each other. It's not the only thing important. When it comes to the more retail type of customer, I don't believe that price is the most important perspective. And there it's a lot about the experience, the customer experience, the betting experience, and continuing our products. And we have a lot of retail customers inside the pools that will also skilled ones, because then they know that they have they can find an edge. So of course it's important that that you can be able to win. It's a balance.
Thanks. One question from me for Simon. It seems that horse race betting and sports betting, obviously it's evolving in its very early form, but at the moment it always seems like they're kind of almost separate: horse race wagering and then the sports betting side. Do you think there's an opportunity as sports betting grows that horse racing can become more of the churn product that fills the gaps between NFL games, NBA games, as opposed to, I guess we see high turnover on table tennis, for example, in the States currently? Is there an opportunity for horse racing, once it integrates more, to have a higher profile in that sports betting landscape?
Yes, I think so. I think, if you look at the timing of the racing, it starts at, roughly 12 o'clock Eastern time and goes through to 10 o'clock in the evening Eastern time, and maybe even longer depending on timing on the West Coast. That there is, there's a substantial amount of content happening across parts of the day when there's not an awful lot of other content happening. And I also think international racing can fit into that gap nicely. And a good example of this is I was watching, a football game on the Monday Night Football in November, and as soon as the game finished, Fox Sports rolled straight into the Melbourne Cup. And so that was effectively the last US sports game happening at Monday Night Football. Everybody gets paid out their bets, and it rolled straight into the Melbourne Cup, which I thought was, that's that kind of, if the TV coverage can work like that and the betting can work like that, international racing as well as local racing can fill some really nice gaps in the betting market. There's only 300 NFL games, and it is, it's one of the biggest sports, but there's only 300 NFL games happening for, 18, 19 weeks a year. So there's a lot of time when not a lot, when there isn't those big sporting events happening in the US. So there is, and I know there's alternatively, there's tons of NBA games and college football games and all those kind of other things. But those really big events, I think they need some content around that, the bookmakers, and racing can really fill that gap. Both tote and fixed odds, if we get the distribution right.
Yeah, agreed. Thanks. If there's any more questions, please fire them into the chat. Otherwise, it looks like there's a comment there that it should be our dogma to provide the punter with as much information as possible. And I guess one discussion point potentially for Jamie or Nicholas is, if we're looking at competing with a Betfair, for example, where there's a lot, essentially, if not professional, very sharp money traded daily on an exchange. If obviously at the moment pools don't necessarily compete there because of refresh cycles or timing, etc. As we move into that world, I guess the debate is always, when you provide all of that data, as long as everyone gets the same data, like how good do we want players to be? Is it as good as possible, or is there a time when players almost become too good, and that becomes, to Simon's earlier point, the late price moves and late swings if there's an inherent computerized advantage?
I think that I would say that we always want the punters to be as good as they can be. I think all of the data we have, and as we get more data, we should make it freely available to everybody. I think there's a difference between the computer, aided wagering and the skilled wagering. I mean, it's largely algo driven. It doesn't really, so obviously you can do your own pricing and build that into the algo, but certainly computer assisted wagering in this country is nearly all market driven rather than data driven around the horses and the racing itself. So I think that's where the edge still remains, that a lot of the computer aided wagering is mostly market driven. It's certainly in this country, potentially in other countries as well. And so there still is an ability for an individual to make profit against those wagers by doing your own thing and being unique in the way you interpret data, and you interpret racing data and do racing form and can be, can get that edge. But yeah, I think it's dangerous when if we ever thought that any punter could be too good. Certainly, and a pool is where they should be playing, because a bookmaker won't allow you to play.
I know there's been discussions around kind of limiting the size of bets into certain pools. So whether you can be too good or too big, I guess, is a discussion. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Nicholas.
Yeah, I just comment on what Jamie just said. I agree with a lot of things that you said, and for us, it's very important to give a lot of statistics and information to our customers to fully dig into experience and analyze your bet. It's a crucial part, and I also think it's very important in terms of transparency, that everyone feels that they have the same information as the other one betting. But if we look at the development in the society, it's not offensive guess that algo-driven bets will increase in the near future if we look at it in 10-year perspective or so on. So I think an important question for us as Tote operators in the future will be how we package this information or statistics. Should it come in an Excel format, or should we present it in another way? So it's not really for the data-driven bets, but more for the usual normal customer.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the experience of Formula One or NFL, the amount of data available freely and packaged interestingly is what drives a lot of the interest in the sport, rather than, like you say, a CSV file for a mathematician.
Yeah, and I think we could use way more infographics, etc., in the way we present data. I think I forgot your other question, but
that's all right. I think you answered it perfectly. There is a question in the chat, which I'll try and relay. When will we have the data info with the effective meters a horse has made in a race? I'm guessing that's more kind of almost like the sectional timing and essentially the exact path a horse has taken, etc. Do we think we'll get to a world where that data is very visible? And I guess ATG lead the way in kind of in-race visuals in terms of where your bet, how your bet's performing. But in terms of those kind of sectional timings and distance run, do we think that's another? It seems like a logical next step. But is that something that ATG are looking at?
Yeah, and I think it could be something that we will present in the future. We do have that information, tracking all the horses with our horse tracking system. It just haven't been the type of information that we have prioritized first when it comes to this position data. But if the customers ask for it, I think that could be something in the future. We still have a lot of things to develop and enhance when it comes to these type of statistics, I believe, both from ATG and the business in the whole.
And I guess across the world, people treat data differently. So Simon, in the US, obviously a relatively data heavy horse racing community, but quite often very expensive to get the data. And if I think of in the UK, you can subscribe to various data providers. Is it for the future of pool betting and betting in generally, is it better that there's a kind of democratization of that data and that's more freely available to everyone to drive turnover?
Yeah, I think that's that's a big difference in the US to most other horse racing nations, is that the key past performance data is behind a paywall for everybody, and it is difficult to get that data and to find how do you really study the form without buying a race card, and that is a barrier to entry for the sport. Now I think lots of racetracks are looking at that. The Stronach Group, we've been giving away free past performances for most of our racetracks over the last 3 months, just to see what difference that makes on turnover and getting out to customers and trying to attract new punters to our racetracks and to bet on the racetracks. I think that's something that is important for us to look at and see whether it makes a difference. We're also, we're installing the TPD system at Gulfstream. Will be our last racetrack where that's installed. So that we will have that data around what's the distance traveled, and we can use that on screen. And I particularly like where Nicholas kind of described earlier that punters can mark their horse, and that will then follow that horse for them on the stream as an individual experience, and being able to use that tracking data for those kind of enhancements to the sport, I think will be great, as well as then afterwards with the form about how far they travelled, who got the inside line, and which who broke the out of the gates fast enough. And with the run up distances in the US, I think that's more and more crucial that we provide that openness of data and the real distance of races and form to all the punters as soon as we can, and as soon as the TPD system is installed, we can work out how we get that data out to people.
I think that looks like the last of the questions. I don't know if anyone else had any more comments from the group. Nicholas, I saw a hand up there, but I think that was that was either a waving goodbye or a misclick. I think that likely wraps us up. So the recording for this will be available. The link will be sent out. But thanks everyone for attending. Thanks a lot to all the panelists. A really informative discussion. And we'll see you all on the next WoTA webinar. Thanks everyone.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Bye.